It was the late 19th century, and every young man in the small English village of Brixham was infatuated with May Forster. The local youth were therefore both shocked and annoyed when John Charrington announced to his friends that he and May were to be married. They knew that he had proposed to her 3 times, and that each time she had refused and even laughed at him. The 3rd time she told him that it was becoming a bad habit. Therefore, when John walked into the men's small clubroom and announced his impending nuptials, they asked what had changed. John attributed his success to perseverance and the best luck ever. May's blushing response, when congratulated, implied that she may have always carried a torch for him. The couple's friend herTHREE, who was to be the best man, eventually became convinced of their rightness for each other. He was heading home through the churchyard one day when he spotted them sitting together amongst the tombstones. He heard John insist to May that he would come back from the dead if she wanted him to. With a cough, herTHREE indicated his presence and passed by. 2 days before the wedding, he was called up to London on business and again noted John and May together, strolling up and down the train station platform, again totally absorbed in each other. herTHREE avoided the pair, but on arrival of the train positioned himself in the first-class smoking carriage in order to secure John's company on the journey. Sure enough, John entered the carriage, observed by a red-eyed May who quietly begged him not to go as she felt certain something would happen to him. John reassured her that nothing would keep him from returning for their wedding in 2 days. As she again pleaded with him, he explained that his dying godfather had done so much to help him that he needed to pay him a visit. But of course nothing would prevent him from returning for their big day. After the train had pulled out, John explained to herTHREE that his godfather, a Mr. Branbridge, was in a terminal decline some 50 miles away and had sent for him. As he was the man's heir, he had felt bound to go. However, he fully intended to be back, alive or dead, in plenty of time for the ceremony. On herTHREE's return from London the following day, he found that John was not yet back in the village. Late that night, he visited John's home, only to be informed that he was still absent. herTHREE went to bed anxious, but the next morning was relieved to find that John had sent him a note. He went to see May, who had also received a note from John. Mr. Branbridge had begged him to stay another night, and the kind-hearted young man had not wanted to refuse. John's note to herTHREE had asked him to meet him at the station at 3 the following day, from where they would both go straight to the church. Feeling rather annoyed with John, the next day herTHREE was at the station at 2:30. He felt it a slight to John's lovely bride-to-be that he would be rushing with the dust of travel on him to his wedding day. herTHREE was in an even worse state when the 3 o'clock train arrived and left without any passengers alighting. He calculated that they would just make it to the ceremony on time if John arrived on the next train, which of course was delayed. herTHREE's anger turned to extreme concern when that train too left the empty station. He headed for the carriage he had arranged for John, both concerned for his welfare but also dreading having to break the news to the expectant May. At 5 minutes to 4, he drew up at the churchyard gate and asked his gardener Biles, who was in the gathered crowd, if they were still waiting inside. Biles replied that no, the wedding must be over by now, and that Mr. Charrington had arrived to the very minute on time. However, Biles did express surprise that the groom looked in such bad shape, like he had had a rough night of heavy drinking. His clothes were dusty and his face sickly pale as he had entered the church with dull eyes looking straight ahead and no words of greeting to those gathered outside. The whispering crowd soon readied themselves with rice to throw, while the 6 bell ringers commenced their chimes to herald the bride and groom's exit from the church. herTHREE observed that Biles was right. John Charrington did not look himself, with dust on his coat, scruffy hair and a black mark above his eyebrow, as if he had been in a fight. His face had a sickly pallor. Then a strange thing happened. The happy wedding peal of the bells suddenly changed to a slow tolling of the passing bell. The crowd gasped with shock at such a silly joke from the ringers, who abruptly dropped their ropes and fled outside. May, the bride, seemed to shudder, her face now grey and shadowy, as the groom led her down the path where people stood with their handfuls of rice. But the rice was never thrown, and the bell ringers could not be persuaded to return to their posts. In the hush, the bridal couple entered into their carriage, and its door slammed behind them. Then the guests and spectators let loose a babble of anger, wonder and conjecture as the carriage drove away. Geoffrey took his own waiting carriage to the bride's house, passing the bridal carriage on the way. He and the gathering guests soon heard its wheels crunching on the gravel and ran to open the door. A shout then went up that the carriage was empty. There was no sign of John Charrington, and May lay huddled in a heap of white satin, half collapsed on the floor of the carriage. She was carried into the house, and when her veil was drawn back, it revealed an expression of agonised terror, while her blonde hair was now as white as snow. As Geoffrey and May's parents stood crazed with horror, a telegraph boy came up the avenue carrying an envelope. The message inside stated that Mr. Charrington had been thrown from a dog cart on his way to the station at 1:30 and died instantly. And yet he had been married to May Forster at 3:30 in the presence of half the parish. Geoffrey remembered John's insistent statement that "I shall be married, dead or alive." No one ever found out what had happened in the bridal carriage on the homeward drive. Before the week was out, May had also passed from shock and extreme grief. She was laid beside her husband in the small churchyard, the couple now together in their marriage made in heaven and sadly transferred to that realm.